Today's guest is Iaquinta. You might remember him in the cage for fights against Diego Sanchez, Cowboy Cerrone, Khabib, and he's also in the real estate world. Today we get to hear more of his stories, learn what it was like to be an elite, top 5 in the world fighter, and explore his life. So folks, Iaquinta.
Too busy right now with everything else and beat up.
Yeah.
You know.
I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is another episode of the Tommy G Show, and we have the opportunity to sit down with a legend. It's an honor to sit down with Iaquinta. Al, first question I got for you is, you've been a busy man fighting, doing real estate, but what the heck have you been up to lately?
I've been selling real estate.
Yeah?
I've been selling real estate. I still train. I still go down to the gym, hang out with the guys, coach some of the younger guys coming up, a lot of the guys that helped me when I was, fighting actively. Now they're starting to make their way to the UFC, which is an exciting time, for everybody. So
I know in Milwaukee that it slowed down a little bit, but there was a streak in the real estate market where it was just like you had to place a no cash offer. Things were just flying off the shelf. What was it like, and what part of New York are you doing a lot of wheeling and dealing in?
In Long Island.
Okay.
Yep, Long Island, about 45 minutes from Penn Station. Took the train in today.
Mm-hmm.
Nice ride in.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was wild back, like 2 years ago. Anything went on the market. It was like a feeding frenzy. Offers coming in, $100,000 over asking price, no inspection. Imagine getting a house with no inspection. Like,
it's a bad
you're
idea.
just like rolling the dice.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But that was what people had to do to get an offer accepted. It was, it was extremely competitive seller's market. And buyers were just doing anything they could. The interest rates were low, and it was a great time in the real estate game.
And I'd imagine people gravitate towards you because I think people that are more so in the corporate world, like anytime they can get their hands on somebody that was a college athlete or a professional athlete, like they feel like, oh, this guy's going to fight for me to get the best deal. Like, I want Al on my team. Is that kind of how it's been?
Yeah, definitely. I've gotten some deals from people that have just seen me fight and kind of exactly gravitated towards me that way. But for the most part, I'm doing deals with people that I went to high school with, people from the wrestling community, people from the gym community. So I've got a big network of people just through athletics and growing up on Long Island. And those are the people that like really know me. Mm. They knew me pretty much before I got into the UFC and then saw what I did in the UFC. So they already knew who I was. The UFC just kind of showed everybody else outside of that sphere. But yeah, it's been fun, man. I was not a salesperson. I never had a sales background growing up. I was just an athlete that got into real estate through a lot of the coaches that I had. I was coached on The Ultimate Fighter by Uriah Faber, and he's a big entrepreneur, big business minded guy. All his team it's trickled down through his team in Team Alpha Male in Sacramento, and real estate is his bread and butter now. So he exposed me to that early, and then a few other people through the way just kind of I always kept going back to real estate, and then got a couple injuries, got my license, started attacking from both ends, the investment side and the sales side, learned the business, and now we're up and running. It's been the first year that I've just been focused on real estate. I haven't been focused really on myself fighting. So it's been a big adjustment.
So one thing that I noticed is, I wrestled all the way through college. I wrestled D3, University of Wisconsin Whitewater, and my senior year, I easily could have been a national champ. I beat the national champ. I majored the 5th and 6th place guy. It just didn't end. I didn't wrestle in the national tournament how I should have, but I had a strong goal. It was team national champs, individual national champ, and then I got a sales job working for a corporate company called Paychecks, where I was helping with payroll and things like that. And one thing that was a little bit depressing is you go from a place where you have a lot of brotherhood. You're sweating together, you're grinding together, you're traveling around the country together, competing for a very high goal. And then it was like, oh, I have to make six units of commission this month. It didn't get me riled up the same way. Did you struggle with going from, I want to be a world champion at 155 to a world that's, I'm not going to say less exciting because I'm in real estate as well and I love the game, but I guess what was that adjustment period like for you?
Yeah, it was, it was definitely tough. It was definitely tough, but at the same time, it was like a whole new thing. It was a whole new world and something that I didn't really have time to think too much into it, I guess, maybe. Because I was failing at a very high rate. I didn't know what I didn't know, and maybe could have done a better job finding the right leaders in the sales aspect. I was kind of like I learned from mistakes, really. But yeah, it was definitely a little lonely compared to being on a team where you're in there grinding together every day, and the real estate industry, the people on your team might be the people that are trying to take from you. So it's a huge difference. But I always went back to Ray Longo and Matt Serra's gyms. I've been in the gym constantly, and that's really, that's where I find that brotherhood. I'm still in there with those guys, and can still consider them family. So that's why I think it, keeps me going on that end. But I do want to build something like that in real estate. I think that athletes have so much to offer as far as real estate sales. It's competition. It's it is what you get is what you put in, and there's nobody that works harder than a wrestler, and there's nobody that can learn from losses, learn from failure, and come back stronger. And that's what I think the real estate industry is missing. It's missing a lot of that heart.
So let's take it all the way back. I think looking back, we could say now wrestling is a martial art, but I think when we took it, we never thought martial arts was like karate, you know what I mean? But I think now that you look at MMA and you see the dominance of wrestling, it's clearly one of the best fighting arts in the world. What was your introduction into wrestling? When did you start, and what was that like?
My parents, my father, they were both lifeguards, and my father was they were both friends with a bunch of wrestlers. And they would always talk about, my father never wrestled, but he was a high school football coach, high school lacrosse, still coaches football. And they would always just talk about their friends that were wrestlers. They were friends with a bunch of wrestlers. They all lifeguarded down at the beach together. And they all spoke, like the way they talked about their friends that wrestled was like a different, they just talked about their wrestling friends differently. And I think that kind of like made me gravitate towards that. My father would always say, nobody messes with Reggie Jones, he's the toughest guy on the beach, I would see his demeanor. He was like a humble guy. He was like, it was just, you could tell there's something different about those guys. And I think that's what kind of made me gravitate towards wrestling. Obviously you go through school, elementary school, bullying, you see bullying, and you're like, you never want to get bullied. And I just always remember my dad saying, nobody wrestles with the wrestlers. They know how to handle themselves in a fight situation, and in just like an everyday situation, how to be like confident and humble.
How old were you when you started?
I started in 7th grade.
Okay, and I know if you look around the country, that where wrestling is its hot spots, it's East Coast and New York, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, it's California, it's the Midwest, Illinois, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio. What was the scene like when you were a kid? And was it something you gravitated to right away, and you knew this is something that I really feel is my path?
I was pretty good on the middle school, junior high school, kind of those tournaments. I would do good. Then I would go into like the summer tournaments, and I'd get killed in the beginning. and then like ninth, 10th grade, I wrestled varsity, so I was younger, but I was kind of had like a 500 record, maybe going against tough guys. Like I was always in there against the tough guys. I would always go in there against the county champs and give them like a hard match, But I wasn't breaking through that. I went to Jay Robinson's 28-day intensive camp. Yeah, I went there twice. I went there into my junior year and then into my senior year. And that just
you went back again?
I went back.
You're
again.
an animal, dude. For the people at home that don't know, there's some crazy wrestling camps around the country. I went to the Navy SEAL wrestling camp in Annapolis, Maryland, but that was only 8 days. This crazy son of a gun went to a 28-day, like 4 workouts a day, right? Like
it was like some days there were 4 workouts. It was wild, man. It was wild.
Do you feel like that was almost your coming of age ritual? Like I think in this day and age, like back in the day, you would have been sent out to the woods for 3 days, no food. You would have had a little vision quest. You would have come back a man. Do you feel like that was kind of your version of a vision quest, was doing something like the J-Rob 28-day?
Yeah, I think so. I just remember coming back and I just had so much confidence against the guys that I saw myself. They say that you go there, and like if you go there as a junior, when you come back, you're like a senior. You get 100 workouts in, which is a wrestling season is like 100 days. So it's like you gain a year of experience in that month, and I definitely felt it. I just felt like I came back, and guys that, if I was having a close match with guys, it wouldn't be close anymore. If there were guys that were beating me, now it was even. I just stepped up a whole level, and it gave me a ton of confidence. I just saw that and I did good when I was there. I was probably one of the hard work is something that I was always, never scared of. I always embraced working hard, and I think that was huge for me. I think that was the biggest thing. Just knowing that I could get through something like that. It had that aura about it,
So when you were coming up, were there any crazy weight cutting stories? Because I know when I was a kid, I knew a kid, Gerard Golsted. This kid would go to Lifetime Fitness and he would sleep in the sauna, and his mom would stand outside the sauna and he would put some sort of like Maybelline or something that opened up his pores, put on a sauna suit, and just sleep in the sauna. And by the time he would get to the tournament, he was like a bag of bones, and he would always get destroyed his first match. And then maybe as he got hydrated, he would do better. I know there was guys that would spit in cups as if that really makes much of a difference. Or
it's more like a mental thing. I think you just don't want to like ingest anything at all, even if it's your own saliva or whatever. It's what a crazy sport. I think back now it's like did the same thing, like sleeping in a garbage bag, and like you're like, how disgusting is that? Like for what? Like I don't know.
And to lose what at extra like 0.8, and you're gonna be tired and not have rested the entire night.
Yeah, no, that's. The weight cutting thing, if I could do it all again, I would just wrestle the weight that I was at, because I would always have my best. I always wrestled my best when I went up in weight, and I wrestled guys that were bigger than me, but really, they were cutting down and they were depleted, and I felt good. I was more focused on wrestling than focused on cutting weight. So that's one thing. And then I wrestled at Nassau Community College, and that was just like a weight cutting season. I went into there. I was like, all right, now I'm in college. I got to cut even more weight. I got to get even more crazy. I wrestled at 141, and it was just too much weight, too much. It was not an enjoyable season, and I really wasn't even like focused on wrestling. I'd Monday go into the room, and I'd have some good matches with guys, and then by Friday, everybody was killing me because I was just bag of bones, like your buddy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember some of the seasons. I think my junior year of college was where I cut the most weight. It was like a 14-pound yo-yo every single week to compete. Yeah. And I remember just being so focused on like, even during my warm-up, like knowing how much I'm sweating on the ground, like, okay, I'm probably about a pound now. Okay, like just always calculating it. And I think it did really take away from getting better at the sport. So if you had to advise kids nowadays, would you say completely cut it out of the sport and just be healthy and move forward that way?
Yeah. Get the body fat as low as possible, train as hard as you can, and feel good on match day rather than like, and when you're younger, you can recover quicker. But like you said, that first match, if you usually, if you're a top seeded guy, your first match isn't going to be, it's going to be a pretty easy match. So you can kind of get through that one, keep rehydrating. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think it's, I don't think it, in the long run, I don't think it benefits you too much. And for sure, I know technically I could have been so much of a better wrestler, but I was more of like a brute, like a goer, third period.
Grind them down until they're tired, and then you can kind of have your way with them.
Yeah. I was never like great on top. I was more of just like take down, let the guy up, and just go. But I think that, if I had spent more time really focusing on, and that was me in the room. I was just trying to wrestle and get as much movement in as I can, get the sweat going, get the weight down. But I really focus on the technique. I think that would be some advice that I'd pass down. More focus on technique, less on weight cutting.
So at what point in your journey did wrestling turn into fighting? Walk me through how that came about.
I had a friend that his uncle bounced at a bar with Pete Sell, Drago, who was a former UFC fighter. And we were in the locker room of the wrestling room, and he was like, Drago's fighting the New York Badass Baroni this weekend. And I was like, I don't know. All right. Sounds good. So we watched that fight, and I was like, wow, it's, I still didn't really like get it. I was kind of, we went to one. We went to UFC 53 in Atlantic City. I was a senior in high school, and just being in the arena, I was like, yo, this is crazy. When somebody got out of a submission, I remember, I think Caro Parisian had Matt Serra in an arm bar, and his arm was like this, and then just as it was about to like get like this and like get snapped, he did a hitchhiker escape, which at the time I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what I was watching, but I knew that I was watching a guy do something that he'd practiced a million times in training, and he knew exactly the right timing and everything. And in the midst of being about to get his arm broke, he was able to finesse his way out of this deep situation, and the crowd just went nuts. And I was like, yo, this is crazy. I was like, I gotta do that one time. I gotta be in there, and I feel like this watching. I didn't sleep that night. I was like, energy, and then I was just like, that's it. My wrestling, my first year at Nassau, cutting a lot of weight, and I was already like looking past wrestling. I was like, I can't wait till wrestling's over because I just want to start fighting.
And then, so one thing that has been kind of the stereotype of wrestlers in the fight community is they're not great strikers. They just want to grab you, get you to the ground. And I noticed in a lot of your fighting, you have a very put together boxing game. How did you develop that? And then also, I mean, I've done one cage fight, and the thing that makes me not love fighting as much as I love grappling is like the kickboxing or Muay Thai sparring days. I was just like, can I just, if this guy's beating me up, I just want to take him down, but I can't.
Yeah.
How did you pass through that? Was that anything that was going through your mind, and walk me through the journey of getting good at punching people?
It definitely took me a while. I feel like I got pretty good at striking pretty quickly. I kind of gravitated towards it, and I don't know what it was. I always wanted to, I was just like so into it. I was so into it, but I was never really like taught how to. My parents would always kind of like steer me away from the boxing. I would ask my dad about, can I get a punching bag? And my mom would be like, the wrestling was a lot for them. But I think that just made me want it so much more, And then once I did learn striking, I was a little, I would still revert to the wrestling. I'd get hit once, and I'd just freaking take the guy down because I could. And I was, it wasn't until I had a fight, a regional fight in the Ring of Combat, that it was a war. It was a war, and
he could stuff the takedown?
Yeah. He stuffed a few takedowns, and I really got comfortable on my feet and confident in my hands, and then from there I almost didn't want to wrestle anybody anymore. I was like, wow, this is so, I felt so good, and the wrestling takes a lot of energy. You miss a few takedown attempts, you might not be in such great shape. But yeah, the boxing kind of came natural to me, but I didn't really show it until a little later on. Yeah.
So I know that on one end you could be doing a 15-minute or 25-minute fight, or you could do a 6-minute, 7-minute wrestling match. Where do you how do you compare the cardio and how do you contrast them?
So the cardio in wrestling is just, you're just going, and you're gonna get tired. There's not really, it's just who's gonna get tired for like that third period. It shows who's worked harder, who's got more like natural. So people have natural cardio, and wrestling cardio. Wrestling cardio is just different than anything.
You think it's tougher than even MMA cardio?
Yeah, for sure. And the tough part of MMA cardio would be the wrestling. Even when you're wrestling, you're in a scramble, and then you get up, and you're there standing, and you're just like, your arms just feel heavy, your legs feel heavy, but you got to know that the other guy's feeling that too. That's what I always try to like. That's what always pushed me through. That is just, I know he's feeling like crap too. I'm gonna put it on him more. Mm-hmm. And but yeah, the wrestling part, wrestling is just so exhausting. I think it's the most exhausting. There's nothing. What else could you do besides try to beat up somebody physically, just tossing them on their back? It doesn't get much harder than that.
So you were actually on the Ultimate Fighter TV show, right? You seem like a guy that's not gravitated towards drama. Like, you're not trying to start stuff. What was it like being in the house, and did you feel any pressure? Like, I don't know how, like, my wife watches some reality TV, and I'm like, oh God, like, I wonder if there's producers in the background, like, egging people on, or
yeah.
What was that like? What was the behind the scenes like of being on the Ultimate Fighter?
They took away our cell phones. It was 13 weeks long. There was no cell phones. We didn't call anybody.
Did you have a girlfriend at that time?
I was single at the time.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah. And
imagine.
That was actually really good, because everybody was like, all these guys were like, they were all pouting and this and that, and I was just like, I was loving it. I was like, this is sick. I'm here with the best coaches, the best training partners. What's better than this? But I kind of kept to myself, and yeah, the drama didn't really want much of a part of it. They didn't push anything on us. The only thing that they would do, every night you'd have to write down what you wanted as far as food, and they'd bring it the next morning. You had to pretty much cook everything for yourself, but you could order pretty much anything you can get in a grocery store, you could order. So they'd bring it the next day. If you wanted alcohol, though, you picked up the phone and you called, and they brought it immediately to you. There was always a stocked bar and everything, but if you wanted anything additional, and that's because they just wanted you to, no phones, no books. You weren't allowed to bring a book. Just the only thing you were allowed to read was the Bible. Or a religious book if you had one, whatever it was. But yeah, they made it very hard to entertain yourself, other than starting drama, getting drunk, and doing something silly. So they were definitely not scripting anything, but they made it.
They knew how to structure the environment so that it was somewhat of a pressure cooker, so that if you get a bunch of tough guys in the right spot for long enough, that something's inevitable to happen.
Absolutely.
Is there anyone, whether it was a coach you met or a mentor you met or just one of the guys on the show, like, was there anyone that just stood out as like, this guy is a complete maniac, or someone that was particularly memorable, and what kind of things would they do? Because I think in that the wrestler community, the fight community, like, there's a lot of really nuts people, but it's kind of masked by being an animal by working very hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Uriah Faber stands out just as the coach. I could have been coached by any fighter, any UFC guy in the world, but I think he was the best. He would bring in people from outside to talk to us, like goal setting, mentorship. Most of the guys would just come in. I think they coach and then they leave and they do their own thing. but he was like invested in everybody. He was, and then he doesn't really know any other way. It was just the way that he does it, you know. And he would really try to. He would coach. He brought in his whole team, Team Alpha Male, which was like, I think there was 8 of us, 8 competitors on his team, and then 8 of like his top guys. It was 16 of the best. It was like 16, half prospects, the best prospects that they brought in, and then half guys in the UFC that were all around the same weight. So it was just, every day was tough. Every day was, you were learning something from everybody every day.
I think it's interesting that at a glance at Uriah Faber, you might, like the California kid, you might expect him to be on a longboard smoking a joint, but in reality, he's a very straight-laced, very business, very entrepreneurial-minded guy, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. He's and so I mean, that was my introduction to real estate. He invited me out to come train with those guys after the Ultimate Fighter, and he owned an entire block when they were giving mortgages out to everybody.
This is like in the 2006, 2007
exactly,
age.
Yeah. It might even been a little before that. He just rented those houses out to fighters, and they paid his mortgage. So they were giving him a house for, giving him a mortgage for nothing. Most people probably ended up not being able to pay the mortgage, but he was he had those houses rented out from fighters, and they had a little community going on there. It was a real what I saw was awesome, and I was like, all right, that's the blueprint. That's what I have to recreate, and I did on that end in the investment end of things, and yeah, it was, and then Mike Chiesa. Mike Chiesa was another guy, came onto the Ultimate Fighter, probably started out not like technically imposing, or he was kind of like, honestly, he was like maybe a little soft in the beginning. Like, I feel like kind of like beat him up a little bit, and then his father passed away while he was on the show, which is like
And he was told that news, or they waited until after?
Oh yeah, he was told that news. He was
Wow.
they allowed him to go home, do the whole service and the wake, the funeral, everything. It was like maybe 3 days he was gone, and then after that you got to come back and you got to fight. Guys that have really been beating you up for the last 10 weeks now. We're at like the quarterfinals and the finals. And he won the tournament. Like, it was the craziest thing. You know what I mean? But yeah, it showed what he was all about. It was crazy.
Because that's a moment that easily he could have folded his cards, gone home, and no one really would have faulted him for it. But I think that shows a character of a man that when crisis happens and they stand up, and then, so it sounds like that was a pivotal moment in his career and becoming, a bad motherfucker.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, that was just seeing that from the outside, is putting that into perspective. It was like, dude, that's like, that guy's got to write a book about that, because that is just insane.
So you get the contract. Was it a big celebration? Were you extremely excited? This was a goal you were chasing? Like, walk me through, okay, now I'm part of the UFC. What's next? How did that feel?
After the Ultimate Fighter, I had a surgery on my knee.
Meniscus tear?
I tore cartilage behind my kneecap.
Okay.
Articular cartilage. Kind of like a rare injury, I guess. But so I had that surgery, and it was like, it's called a microfracture surgery. It's kind of like a patch job. It just holds up for a little bit, so they say. But all I wanted to do was just get back into fighting. I was like, just full steam ahead. Couldn't wait to be in the UFC and finally get my first my real UFC fight. So yeah.
Would you say you have a love-hate relationship with the UFC? Because I know some of your post-fight interviews, you've kind of gone off a little bit, and I think a lot of people watching it can't imagine, like, these are the highest level of fighters, and then you see like the payouts, and then you see them like, and I love the Dana White story, but then you see them with like the Nelk boys giving them $250,000 in cash for their birthday. Like, have the fighters ever considered unionizing, and like, what is the behind the scenes of like, what the hell? Like, these guys are yanking us a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're alled to speak on some of these things. You're still under contract.
I do. it's it started out as a love relationship, and now I kind of really just hate the whole thing. I like the people, a lot of the people, most of the people in the organization, the people that work for the UFC, but like the business, it's they don't definitely not paying these fighters enough.
What do you think the minimum should be? A minimum fight. If you show up, whether you win or lose, you should be getting minimum X.
I think you should get a hefty sign on bonus, But you know what the thing is? Then it's such a hard thing it's a hard thing to say, But I think $50,000 minimum, because if a bonus is $50,000, a guy goes in there in his first UFC fight, he gets a bonus of $50,000. It's like, that's not a bonus. A bonus is like a little extra. You know what I mean? Like $50,000, that's like 3 times your pay. That's like insane, So I think that, and then with the money they're making now and the way money's changed in the last couple of years, $50,000 10 years ago, which is what the bonuses were, is now $50,000 still, which is not the same amount. So it's like
the cost of inflation hasn't caught up with the UFC pay.
Everything.
And they raised the price on the pay-per-view, but it doesn't seem like that really trickled down to the fighters either.
We're $80 now? Oh my God.
That's like an investment for the family, huh?
It's crazy. And then there's what is there, 6, 7, 8 cards a year? It's like, then you got to pay for the ESPN Plus. It's a lot. But yeah, I mean, the fighters have to make way more. I just know that I didn't make money until I really fought Khabib. That was the first fight I made any money.
Really?
Yeah.
The rest of it was kind of a wash between the training camp and everything you needed to do to prepare?
I mean, I made a little. But like, I was fighting 5 times a year. You know what I mean?
Against tough
competition. Guys. When I fought Joe Lazone, I was the co-main event. So I was the third from Anderson Silva fought Nick Diaz. The fight before that was, I forget who the co-main event was.
That Nick Diaz fight was insane. Now he would lay on his back and go like this to people. Yeah. So you were the co, and you felt like you still weren't making a buck.
I don't know. I think I made like freaking. It's almost embarrassing to say I made like $35,000. Where I'm like the third on the pay-per-view, like freaking packing out this arena, and it's like it's a sickness these guys have, and I had. You like look at the UFC and you're like, oh, I made it to the UFC, and then it's like, all right, well you made it, but now you didn't really make it. So you're like, oh, I gotta make it. I gotta be in the top 10, and then you get in the top 10, and you're like, I made it to the top 10, and you're like, you're still on the contract from the first Ultimate Fighter contract. So fight out that contract, and then you fight out your contract, and then you got one fight left, and you're focused on the fight. It's just they make it. It's but
it seems like a very small number of the fighters have real bargaining power. As far as you have to be the guy that sells the pay-per-view, like the Connors of the world, the Sugar Seans of the world, to seem like you have weight at the table. Like even the fact that they let Francis go when that's a guy you want to keep around. It's tough to see from the fan perspective to see that type of stuff happening.
Yeah, and it's a shame that they're calling him. They're saying,
that he's scared.
That he's scared. Do you think that guy's really? You seen the guy? He's not scared of anybody. But yeah, no, I respect that guy so much because that's what, and it's a shame on like a lot of the other people for not stepping up and being like, nah, you know what, we want the same thing. We all want it to go, it's really the top guys are going to be the ones that are going to have to get it done. But they do pay those guys enough, even though it's not as much as they should be getting paid. They do pay them enough to where they
follow suit.
They're satisfied. Yeah, and exactly.
So I think I didn't do my full research, but I believe you're the only guy to go 5 rounds with Khabib.
I think so. Yeah.
Dude, what was it like preparing for that? Like, was it something that you were kept up at night, like this guy's a fucking animal, or was it like, I think he's overrated, underrated? Like, how do you even prepare for a guy like Khabib, and what was it like fighting him?
So I didn't really prepare for. I got that fight on 36 hours notice.
That's right.
I was supposed to fight Paul Felder, and then
Tough matchup too, a very tough
super
animal.
tough.
Yeah.
Totally different fight.
Yeah.
More of a stand up focused fight. If anything, I was going to be the wrestler in that matchup, and then so I square up with Felder. We get on the bus. The counter thing with the bus, the dolly.
Ah, okay, yeah,
that
yeah,
happens. A bunch of Mike Chiesa got cut. He had to pull out of his fight. And then the next day, Max Holloway misses weight after Tony Ferguson tripped on the wire.
Yeah.
They flew him in. And I remember seeing Holloway on the Tuesday before, like when everybody shows up at the venue. And I was like, this guy's huge. I go, that guy's a 45-pounder. He had to be like 190 pounds. And then he was going to cut down to 155. And sure enough, the day of the weigh-ins, I weighed in. I go back up to my room. I'm rehydrating. And they said, I remember I looking through Twitter, like, this guy's, they're calling him out. They're not letting him cut any more weight. And right away, I was like, I got to get in there. I got to figure out a way to get this fight.
So what was that like? Did you get your agent to start placing the right calls? You tweet at somebody? Like, how did you get your name in the ring?
Yeah, I was talking to my manager, and he was talking to them, and then I'm looking on Twitter, and it's like Anthony Pettis is in, and then Anthony Pettis is out, and then it was like Felder, me. I just went downstairs, and I at the time Sean Shelby, he was not very happy with me. We had been arguing over. We had some words on the phone, maybe a month before that. So he was definitely not excited to see me, and I was just yelling at him from across the room. I was like, Shelby, I'm your guy. He was just like this. He was like, oh God. And then sure enough, I got a call like a half an hour later to come downstairs and weigh. They wanted to weigh my underwear because I weighed in. Championship weight is 156. So championship weight is 155, and I weighed in at 155.2.
So they wanted to see if your underwear was 0.2.
Yeah, so then they would make it a title fight. It was 0.2. I made the weight, and I was talking to Dr. Sherry. She was the team doctor at the time. I'm like, Sherry, should I put like water on the underwear to make it heavier? She was like, let's weigh it. We weighed it. She was like, it's 0.2. If this scale is good, you'll be good. Don't put water in it. So and she was like, I think you'd be. It might have been like 0.1, and then like it might have like sometimes been 0.2. You know what I mean? So I was like, I don't know. So I went down. Sure enough, the athletic commission didn't. They wouldn't acknowledge the difference in weight with the underwear. So it technically wasn't a title fight, I guess. But Dana White said if I won, I still would have got the title and whatever. But yeah, that was the craziest 3-day span. Find out now I got the fight, and the next day is the fight. So like between the bus thing on Thursday, finding out on Friday, actually fighting on Saturday, it's like if there's 3 days that are crazier than that, I don't know.
When this type of stuff is happening, are you a guy that just loves the pressure? Like the more chaos, the better? Or was this just like, oh my gosh, like this is almost like too much is going on? Like I just want to know who it is, when to show up, and just have me go do it. Because I think there's so many nerves behind the scenes too of like competing that it's already stressful enough, or you get nervous enough knowing who it is. But then when everything starts getting rotated around and there's all these moving pieces, what was that like?
I wanted that once I was like, I can get this fight. I'm in the mix for it. Pettis, I think, kind of priced himself out of it. I don't think he wanted that fight. He was like, yeah, I'll do it for like $3 million, and they were like, no. So you kind of know he's where his head's at. And then He was supposed to fight Chiesa. Chiesa got cut. I was like, I kind of like made up my mind. I was like, I'm fighting this guy. Like, it's gonna happen.
Were you and Felder competing to get that spot a little bit?
Yeah, I think
he
so.
was jockeying too.
Yeah. He was unranked at the time, but I was on a 5-fight win streak. Yeah, I don't know why they would have given it to him, other than that he's like a UFC company guy.
Makes sense. So you were the right guy in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, I was ranked. It was in New York. I'm from New York. It was at the Barclays Center. And I was on a 5-fight win streak, so coming off of a knockout over Diego Sanchez. So yeah, it was, I forgot where we were.
Well, one thing that comes to mind is I recently heard a Bilal Muhammad interview where he trained with a lot of the Dagestani guys, and he just said there is nothing like the pressure those guys bring. What was it like fighting Khabib? Was he as top tier as you expected? Like, what was your thought process going in there, and what did you experience?
Yeah, he's good at getting guys. He's got like a funnel. Just get guys against the cage. Once he gets against the cage, he's got trips and everything from takedowns from the cage, get you down, leg lace, and then from there he just beats the crap out of you. So
it felt like you didn't take that much damage from him, especially compared to other opponents.
I didn't have too much time to prepare for him, but I was always kind of like, I was always watching, and everybody in the division, especially the guys at the top, and so when he did get me down against the cage, I didn't want to let him get my legs locked up. I just wanted to get my back, get my side against the cage and really be work up. And that's kind of what it was. He had a lot of pressure on my hand. All my weight was on my hands. He was driving me forward, which tired out my arms pretty quickly. And then when we ended up back on our feet, he was definitely the fresher. I would say, in the later rounds. Once I got a hang of his wrestling and was able to stop a few takedowns, I was a little behind the 8 ball on my conditioning, I think, because it was a 5-round fight. I was training for 3.
And you didn't do as much of a wrestling heavy camp either?
Yeah, definitely was not the fight that I expected to go into, fighting Paul Felder.
So knowing how many injuries happen, how many guys miss weight, how many guys pull out, do you think that are your camps relatively well-rounded so that when one guy shuffles around, you're fine? Or is it very camp specific, like Felder chops the legs, he likes to swing and bang, it's going to be on the feet? Like, how do you strategize for that?
So, yeah, we're pretty much, it's you're working on yourself, tailoring it to your opponent, I guess, is in our strategy, or mine was. I knew what I wanted to work on in general, and then I knew what he brought to the table. So definitely knew you really have to work on everything, but definitely you have to be aware. I was more aware of what Felder was bringing to the table with the kicks and the spinning stuff and that kind of stuff. But I knew that I was going to have to kickbox. This big, strong guy might not be able to take him down. Going to have to kickbox. But I do want to take him down, so I was definitely working on takedowns and top stuff. Definitely didn't think I was going to be on the bottom. So but I'm always working on that. You're working with good wrestlers to get good at taking guys down, so you end up on your back as well in training. So yeah, you definitely tailor it towards your opponent, but you're working on yourself for the most part.
Were you ever scared? Because I know in the kickboxing world, I'd be really scared to check a kick without any shin guards on. And a guy like Paul Felder, I've seen him work out at Roofersport a bunch of times. And when he gets into the gym, he just has an aura about him. Like, it's almost like energy is radiating off of him, and he is just a killer. And I've seen him kick pads, and I've thought, I think my leg would easily break if I ever were to try and check his kick. Did that occur to you?
Yeah, the mindset at the time was, I don't give a shit. I'm freaking checking that kick. I'm breaking his foot. You try to get out of the way, but also, you if you check a kick the right way,
He remembers it.
It's gonna hurt him, and I mean, he does look like a guy that just has powerful shit. Like some people, they have shins that they're like freaking iron, and he looks like one of them. So definitely don't want to take a kick the wrong way or take too many kicks. So I mean, that was a huge part of the game plan was interrupting those kicks.
So Khabib gets his hand raised, and you're sitting there in the octagon. Was there a part of you that was like, man, on a short notice, I took it to, and I went 5 rounds with one of the best guys in the world? Or was it like, I think I could rematch him for the title? Like, what was going through your head after that loss?
It was definitely motivating. It was, I didn't expect him. The first takedown he got, he kind of dove in on a low single and brought it up, and that was not something I'd seen from him before. And I was like, but I mean, I just remember him holding on to it, and we were both dry at the time, and I was trying to get my leg out, and I was like, wow, this guy's strong. So it was a little unpredictable takedown. The stuff that I had seen him do was everything against the cage, which I probably brought that takedown out of him because I wasn't going against the cage. I was pushing forward, not letting him get me against the cage. I remember thinking that, I was motivated. I was like, I'm going to train my ass off. I'm going to come back and beat him. I definitely thought it was in the cards. I think that I think he got me in the beginning with the wrestling kind of, that I hadn't trained. I thought that if I focused on that, I could, do better in that aspect. And then the later rounds when I was tired and we were standing up, he was hitting me with jabs. I just felt slow, and I kind of contributed that to not training for 5 rounds. So yeah, in my head I was motivated. And then I fought Kevin Lee, who's kind of like, not similar to Khabib, but more of a wrestling base, and that was kind of like my, that was like a warm up, I guess, or like I was trying to fix mistakes that I made in the Khabib fight with the Kevin Lee fight.
So I think one thing that's scariest to me that I've experienced in wrestling is you want to be the guy that's making them drown, and you're putting the work on them. And like you see guys that, it might be a 1-1 first period or very close first period, but then as they get tired, like I've had guys where it goes from equal match to anything I want to do, I can do to somebody. But is there a time you remember being in just deep water that was it was kind of a very scary place to be? You've done wars with Masvidal, Cerrone, Khabib, Hooker. I mean, some just absolute killers. Walk me through a time that you were just in deep water.
I mean, as far as like physical conditioning, I don't think I ever got beat there. I was always pretty good shape. I was always came ready. I think maybe the Hooker and the Cerrone fight, both of those fights, I was a little mentally. I wasn't. I don't know. I don't know what it was. It was, both of those guys are good. Both of they're also longer guys, So maybe that's kind of like kryptonite, I guess you could say, like a longer, taller guy. But those fights, I just felt like I couldn't get anything going. I felt like I wasn't tired at the end. Like those are my best performances when I'm absolutely exhausted. Because I know that if I'm absolutely exhausted, the other guy's even more tired. And that probably meant that he broke at some point, physically, mentally, whatever. But those fights, I remember, like, the bell rang, and I was like, I'm not really, like, I wasn't exhausted. I wasn't tired, but I got the crap beat out of me. You know what I mean? Like, the Cerrone fight, I was more like, I don't think I was really breathing too heavy, but I was definitely, like, just got the crap kicked out of me. And, I think I just went in with the wrong game plan, and there were some situations early on in that fight where I think if I would have done certain things, that whole fight would have been different. Like the first 10 seconds, I pushed and I had him up against the cages, and then I kind of like backed off. And I think that was like a big mistake. I think if I would have kept pressure on him, I think he's the kind of guy that, it's decided pretty early. You put pressure on him, he can kind of be broken there. If he's not having an enjoyable fight, and I made it too enjoyable for him, and that was, and then it was just a slippery slope. Once he got a little momentum, it was it was not a good night for me.
So now you're in a stage where you're wheeling and dealing in real estate. You lost close fights to world-class opponents. I guess walk me through your decision-making process of figuring out, am I going to go 100% into – because it's hard to do anything really well and be in both worlds, right? So walk me through your decision-making process and saying, I think I'm going to focus more on real estate than the fighting.
Yeah, the decision was kind of made for me. I think so just had a bunch of knee surgeries. I can't even keep track when the last one was. I was kind of like already in the real estate mindset, and like you said, you can't attack both. I mean, real estate and fighting for the UFC. Like, I couldn't have picked two harder things to try to do in life. Real estate is just an absolute grind, especially when you're starting out. Was in that mode. I was in the real estate mode, and then they were coming to MSG, and I was like, they offered me a fight, so I took it, and didn't really play out too well. I wasn't in the best shape, going into the training camp. I wasn't all in, you know what I mean? And it showed in my performance,
Do you have any itch? Is there any part of you that's like, if I get the right matchup or the right call, I'm back, baby, and I'm ready to do something?
Every time I work out, every morning, I still work out, every morning. And I'm working out like I'm working out for a UFC fight. I'm like, I still got this. And then I wake up the next morning and I'm like, hip or my knee or something, But yeah, I mean, the thought of training for a fight keeps me going. When a workout's getting tough and I'm starting to get tired, I'm like imagining working out and some guy's training for me, like we're training for a fight. That's I think the extent of it. At this point, yeah, I think you get to a point where, and who knows, maybe it's just because I'm thinking that way that it's true. But yeah, I think that I've had success selling real estate, and I've had success in my investments. I think I can bring everything that I've learned in athletics to the real estate game, and it's something that nobody's seen. I don't think there's very few guys. There's a couple high-level athletes that are real estate agents in the Long Island area, and they crush it. They do great. And those guys aren't the wrestlers, and those guys aren't the guys that wrestled and made it to the UFC. And, I just think that I have the connections. If I can't make it, if I can't be the best in that game, then shame on me, because I have so much going for me right now, and so many people that are behind me, believe in me, and I really do care about people. I think there's so many people, even that's like a real X factor in the longevity of real estate sales, is not just trying to get a deal done, but doing right by people and doing right by other agents and just doing right, being a good person. There's so many just cutthroat, scumbag, slime ball, freaking losers in this business. And yeah, they have they get a deal, they have a good little streak, and then people find out what they're really about.
So I'll walk you through what I look for in investments in Milwaukee. And I think this is going to be foreign to you because, well, first of all, let me ask you this. I buy mostly, I look for 2% rule duplexes or single families, but guess what you can get a duplex for in the hood in Milwaukee?
Probably $60,000.
Yeah. So what we try and do is buy houses that are 50, 55K, put maybe 25, 26, 27 into them, make them really nice, and then charge $800, $850 for a 2-bedroom, and we 2% rule on that all day.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like that you can get in New York, right?
There's nothing, nowhere there's not a house. You can't even get a garage for 60 grand. Like, it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, right now in Long Island, you're looking the lowest. If you can find something under 400,000, it doesn't exist. You know.
So what's an ideal investment to you? What's the blueprint? What do you look for?
So I like the multifamily stuff. You know, something that you can put a little bit of work into. Maybe like renovate a basement, something that isn't considered usable square footage. You know, kind of like
make a bedroom, add an egress window.
Yeah, something like that. You know, do outside entrance in a basement, something like that. I like multifamily. I like Airbnb. One part long-term rental, one part they kind of balance each other out. The long-term renter takes care of the property because they're always there. The short-term person's in and out. They usually do take care of the property because there's someone living below them. The person below them is kind of like the homeowner. Makes friends with the neighbors, everything, you know.
And you have that person, like they're responsible for cleaning the sheets and putting the setup together, or do you pay outside like cleaning services to handle all of that?
Outside cleaning service will do everything like that. I've offered, you know, then it gets a little dicey, you know, if people are like, they're cleaning.
And they don't do a good job, and then you have to talk to them about it, and there's still rent is due.
Exactly, yeah, things get a little crazy like that. But, yeah, that's kind of my little niche, you know. Airbnb, the short-term rental stuff, I shouldn't be telling people this. Don't do it.
The thing is,
it doesn't work on Long Island.
I think it's ideas are a dime a dozen, but people that can execute is really what makes it happen. And that the truth is just most people, it's either not their lane or they're just not going to execute. So is there an Iaquinta 5-year plan here? Like, what do you envision for your future as you're building your empire?
So, I have a 5-year plan. I don't want to say it because people are going to think I'm crazy. But I have big goals in the real estate. Like I said, I want to build a team. I want to build a team of agents that are like different than real estate brokerages are now. You know, people that like choose to do that. People that are like passionate about not just the commission check, but like being the best at it, like really being the best, like knowing your market, knowing everything about the business, and not just knowing enough to get a commission check. And I think I could do it differently. I've been blessed to have some of the best coaches in the world in athletics, and then I've seen the way things are done in this real estate industry, and I think that, you know, maybe I never looked in the right places for mentorship in real estate, but everywhere I look, everywhere I've seen, it's not the same. Fuck no! I was hoping this wasn't gonna happen. It was kept dinging, and I was like, oh no, someone don't call me, please. Make sure this is off. But yeah, I really want to attack that real estate sales brokerage angle of
starting
things.
your own firm.
Starting my own firm.
Do you see yourself? It sounds like you're already active in the coaching space, but is that an area of your life you want to develop as well and be a mentor, be someone that can help pass the baton and bring the young generation up? Yeah,
I think I kind of do that with the guys that have helped me when, you know, my sparring partners, when they were just kind of getting in there, and I was in the UFC and they were helping me, you know, when you got a UFC fight coming up, kind of like everybody kind of comes together for you. And it's, you know, now these guys are there, you know, now these guys are getting into the UFC. We've got guys fighting in Bellator, guys that would travel with me. They'd be like, you know, they'd help spar. They'd be like my training partners when I travel, and now it's their turn. They're traveling for their fights, and it's cool to see, man. It's so awesome, you know.
Do you see any of the other fighting organizations gaining steam because of how they're going to pay, or is it just there's the critical mass of eyes on the UFC and they're going to be the dominant players for a long time?
Yeah, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be hard for anybody to mess with them. Uh, you know, it's just they're so squared away. They really have such a monopoly on the industry. There's the fighters that leave and go to PFL or Bellator are being allowed to leave by the UFC. Like if the UFC really wanted them back, the UFC would have them back. The UFC is like just giving Bellator and the PFL enough air to breathe because I think they could drown them at any time if they really wanted to. You know, I think that they're so smart with the way they structure their contracts, with the way that they negotiate with fighters. There really is no now with them bringing in the Contender Series and the way the contracts are structured for the Contender Series. It is it's crazy to like look back and like the Ultimate Fighter when I was fighting on it. We were basically like fighting each other for free. Like it was crazy. It was so nuts. Like you're on that Ultimate Fighter, I think you get paid like $1,000 a week. You know, and
wow.
And if you fight and you win, you fight and you win. You're one step closer to a UFC contract, which like isn't the best contract to start out with. But I don't think anybody's messing with the UFC anytime soon. They're too squared away.
Who's a fighter that's really turning your head right now that you're like, this guy is just either their style is super unique, the way they market themselves. Like who's someone that you just keep your eye on or that you're just very impressed with?
So I mean we got a bunch of guys at the gym. Nazim Sadikov just had a big win in the UFC.
Is that the guy that's 17-0 right now? No.
No, you're thinking just last week.
The guy that wears the fur hat and
No, he's from Azerbaijan. He was in Brooklyn. Now he's on Long Island, but he just had his UFC debut. He won super close fight. Ended up catching the guy with a knee and cutting him. One fight of the night, big win. And I think that like he didn't even really show what he's made of in that fight. You know, he showed what he's made of, but technique wise, I think he's like one of the best strikers and like pleasing to watch. Like it's gonna be when he really starts getting going and getting comfortable in there. Dennis Bazooka is he was on the Contender Series twice. He's 1-1 on the Contender Series. Staten Island guy moved to Long Island. He's should get a UFC contract now, and that Raul Rosa guy,
the 18-year-old kid,
he's the young kid.
Yeah.
I mean, that's interesting to see. You know, I remember when I was that age, I was definitely like a late bloomer, and to see this guy going up against 30-year-old men and just embarrassing them is crazy to see. Yeah, I don't know who else. What about you? Who?
So I think I love the Nick Diaz era.
Oh,
I love that era.
You can't beat those guys.
And it was so angry or frustrating to see we take him out. And especially like there's guys that are literally doing steroids that are back in quicker than him. And they took him out at some of the best part of his career. That was really infuriating to see.
Yeah.
I think the McGregor come up era is one of the I'm not a big sport guy. I'm not, watching football, baseball, all of that. But to me, the coolest era of sports I've ever been able to witness has been the Mystic Mac era.
When he knocked out Jose Aldo, that was the craziest thing. Like Jose Aldo was, people forget like how unbeatable that guy was. No one could even imagine Conor doing it. And then he said he was going to do it, and then he did it. It was like, yo, that's nuts.
It makes you wonder. Like his documentary is a very inspirational one, and also. There's a lot of people that would be classified as delusional if they talked like that. But because he can keep backing it up, and especially in that era, backing it up, he kind of built this legend out of himself. And I just love stories like that. Like, oh, I went from a plumber to like the #1 paid athlete of the year. And so I would say the John Jones fight was fun to watch. Seeing him quickly dismantle Sorrell. I would love to see either a Stipe matchup I would love to see a Francis match up there. But it's an era where the talent is so good and there's always new guns coming up that it's always exciting. There's something I want to ask you about because you were showing some Long Island love, some New York love. I read a book about the mafia families. I don't know. You might have to be older to answer some of these questions, but like the stranglehold they had on like every window that went up in a skyscraper during the 80s and 90s, they had an extra bid on that. The waste, getting rid of the trash in Long Island and all over New York, they had the extra little racket in there. Was mafia culture or the mafia presence something that you were aware of or was talked about when you were a kid?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I was born in Valley Stream. And I mean, that was kind of like, I mean, you always like heard about these guys and you heard, the families that lived around and you know, this guy's father, he's got that nice house. What does his dad do? His dad's in that. Oh,
Consulting, eh?
Yeah. It's like you kind of like know, so you know the guys that are, what they do and yeah, I never was like too into like that world.
Like, did you ever go to school with kids that it was like, oh, his dad like controls XYZ in this part of town and like don't mess with his kid?
It was not. I don't think it was like that. It was more like, yeah, I don't think it was that. Where I grew up, it wasn't like that.
Okay.
But there were guys that were like probably like in the scene, in some capacity, and they always had the nice house, and their mom drove the nice car, and you're like, what do they really do? You don't really like think
some
about it
vague
too much,
description of
but
what
yeah,
kind of
like,
career they have.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when you're not selling houses, when you're not choking people, punching people, what kind of things are you up to?
I mean, in the summer, I'm at the beach.
Yeah.
In the summer, I love to be down at the beach. I love to surf. I got a boat.
You're a surfer.
Yeah.
Are there? This is one of probably my biggest fears. But are there sharks around in these waters? Or is that something you got to think about?
They're there. They don't. There's never been a shark attack.
Okay.
Like, I don't think on Long Island.
And they're sure not attacking you, right?
I don't. It'd
be a bad decision.
They would probably if it was. But yeah, no, there's never been a shark attack, so I feel very comfortable surfing on Long Island, which is great.
And I imagine you grew up swimming a lot because both your parents were lifeguards, so you're very comfortable in that type of environment.
I grew up at the beach. So that's where I feel the most home in the water. Just getting tan is like the best. Working out on the beach in the morning. Yeah.
So you've lived an extremely disciplined life, and you're a guy that's thrived off of hard work. Do you ever see a chapter of your life where you're going to be more of like a vagabond or someone that just, I'm going to go, to Brazil for 6 months, and I'm going to go explore. I'm going to have my little beach Airbnb. Like, do you picture always being active and hammering and busy, or do you see a chapter of your life where it's like, I've earned a little bit of peace and quiet?
I kind of go through like my life. I really kind of I go through phases of the hard work, discipline, and then I've spent like a month in Australia a couple times. I spent some time in Costa Rica. I spent this last.
And are you just relaxing when you're there, or what are you up to?
Pretty much, like I do. I try to, wherever I go, I try to set up seminars. So I set up seminars in Australia for a month, and then I just stayed in Sydney and taught seminars and just kind of like chilled. I didn't really have much going on, at the time. So I did that. That was super fun. I was like, that's my favorite place in the world. Australia is like,
yeah,
it's like, and the seasons are opposite. So when it's winter here, it's summer there. So like you get through the summer's kind of winding down, and then if you can get to Australia for like February, the month of February is probably the worst month on Long Island. It's like just January, Christmas, New Year's, and then January it's like, all right, what are we doing here? Just like waiting for summer.
Are you actively taking seminars? Like if someone reached out in Chicago or Milwaukee and you're like, we want you here.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Love teaching seminars.
So I trained at Rufus-Sport for a long time, and
Yeah.
then the jiu-jitsu instructor split. I'm more of a grappler. I followed him and his path. And
Daniel.
yes,
Yeah,
he's the
yeah.
man. And his
Yeah.
son is trained at Team Alpha Male. And
Oh, wow.
his son is, oh my gosh, this kid is 18, 19, 20, and just a dangerous, dangerous man. Like,
Yeah.
I've never been submitted more times in the gym by anyone else but him.
Yeah.
And so maybe we'll have to talk when I go back home and see if we can get you out to
that'd be
Milwaukee.
cool. Yeah, absolutely. He was so he was friends with Fabio Prado, who was Uriah Faber's jiu-jitsu coach. And when I was on The Ultimate Fighter, Daniel came and he taught for a couple days. Yeah,
that's
real
my
good-
guy.
good
I love that
stuff.
guy.
Nice. Yeah.
So have you seen, like, would you ever want to go to Brazil and study jiu-jitsu? Because that is a different, like, there's a different energy in the jiu-jitsu. Like, it's more of cultural, traditional, like, it's in your blood almost, you know?
Yeah, no, definitely. I would love to do that. I've always wanted to go to Thailand and learn from the Thais. You know, that's stuff that definitely got to do, and I got to do it pretty soon. You know what I mean? We ain't getting any younger over here, so yeah. And I was supposed to go to Brazil. I was supposed to go to Thailand. Both times just like ended up not working out. You know, but that's it's definitely something I want to do.
So, Al, you've lived a very storied life. You've got to accomplish a lot, and you still have way more to do. Any words you have for the people, a message of inspiration, or where to find you? And
If you're looking to buy, sell, or rent anywhere in the United States, especially Long Island, and especially the center of Long Island, Wantor, you know where to find me.
get this guy on your team. He'll cut you a deal. And also, guys, if you want a seminar of someone, invite him to your city. Let's let him teach the people and keep the wonderful sport of wrestling, MMA, jiu-jitsu, all of that flowing, because that's such a great thing for a person to be a part of. So, guys, this has been another episode of the Tommy G Show. And thank you, guys. We'll see you next episode.